Welcome to a new episode of Veil Lifted, a video essay where I discuss fascinating cases that involve secrecy and discovery. Before we get into this video, as you know, content like this is often demonetized, so I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Adam & Eve. Adam & Eve is America's favorite adult store. Not only does it come with discreet packaging, but they also donate 20% of their profit to help fight the spread of HIV around the world. They also have a 24/7 customer service and have 90-day no-hassle returns. If you go to adamandeve.com and use code GLARE, you'll get 50% off one item and free shipping in the US and Canada. Thank you, Adam & Eve, for sponsoring this video. Today, we will be discussing Mark Andrew Twitchell, a man often referred to as the Dexter copycat killer, as he was a fan of the show about the vigilante murderer. Twitchell was born July 4th, 1979 in Edmonton, Alberta. He aspired to be a filmmaker, and though he produced some content, it never truly took off. However, his name would soon become notorious when he was arrested on October 31st, 2008 for the murder of John Brian Altinger. In fact, ironically, one of the central reasons this case interested the world was because of his hobby. It was almost hard to believe that the man who created a fan film prequel for Star Wars would be the one to murder someone, especially since he had a wife and child. In fact, Twitchell also created a script for a comedy titled Day Players and a short horror film titled House of Cards. Twitchell was so convinced of the value of his films that in 2012, in prison letters, he wrote that all the footage is sheer gold and that way too many amazing people gave so much of themselves to make that film magic. An additional interesting fact about this case that made the crowds go wild is that Twitchell actually documented his attempt as well as successful murder on his computer. He wrote it in a document titled SK Confessions, standing for Serial Killer Confessions. He will be quoted here and there, but the document is 43 pages, so it will be linked below. The text starts by saying, "This story is based on true events. The names and events were altered slightly to protect the guilty. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer. Like anyone just starting in a new skill, I had a bit of trial and error in the beginning of my misadventures." Twitchell's plan was to use online dating in order to lure his victims out. At first, Twitchell planned to aim to kill married men who were cheaters, but he realized they'd be the first to be reported missing compared to someone single who might have no one notice their absence for a few days. He wrote, "I finally settled on middle-aged, single men who live alone. For one thing, they would be easy to lead by their dicks, easy to manipulate, easy to seduce under my fake female disguises. They were also the most likely targets to have the most expendable money in their bank accounts, a tidbit I would use to my advantage later on. Finally, by living alone, once they were out of the picture, I could easily enter their living spaces undetected with no forced entry and remove all sorts of valuable items from their premises." Twitchell strategized a shopping list, including a hockey mask on which he would paint golden streaks for quote-unquote dramatic effect, in his words. Twitchell followed the guidelines seen in murder films, such as buying his tools in different stores and always paying in cash to avoid a paper trail. He even bought a hunter's game processing kit because it reduced the spatter caused by power tools. This information indicates exactly how violent and how much destruction he was planning on causing. He wrote, "Why not use a whole set of tools designed to take apart large animals in the forest on the fly? It reduces the spatter caused by power tools and takes the noise level way down too, and there's also just something more gratifying about sawing through tendons and bone with your bare hands than using something else that takes the fun out of the work." Additionally, Twitchell bought a stun baton and a realistic-looking airsoft pistol to get the preliminary weakening of the victim done. His plan was to create a trap room made to mimic furniture in a regular house, and then, once the victim was murdered, he'd incinerate them in a steel drum. Though in his SK Confessions, Twitchell often boasts about how safe he's being between paying in cash and using an IP address blocker, it did not occur to him that writing an account of his attempts at murder on his computer could be an issue. He created a number of fake female accounts on dating sites. On his first attempt, he met with a man referred to as Frank in his SK confession, but who is likely to be Gilles Tétrault. With bold confidence that the stun baton would suffice to subdue his victim, Twitchell put it to Tétrault's neck. Unfortunately, Tétrault was not strongly affected and fought back. After being punched, Tétrault was likely going to exit, but Twitchell took out the airsoft pistol and Tétrault froze. However, the two ended up fighting manually again, and after a consistent struggle, Tétrault managed to escape and get into his car. He escaped successfully. Twitchell wrote, "I don't know why I played it as cool as I did. Maybe it was something Frank said during the skirmish about swearing not to tell anyone if I let him go. Maybe it was my own instincts about reading people and the fear in their eyes that told me deep down he wouldn't report the incident, but I felt okay. After this encounter, Twitchell returned home to his wife and child, rehearsing his behavior in order to avoid suspicion. He spent the next day with his 8-month-old daughter, almost as if nothing had happened. In fact, Twitchell's private life was messier than what met the eye. In college, Twitchell had met a woman dubbed Lacey in his writing. They had a roller coaster romance that ended as Lacey was apparently a serial dater and didn't want to settle. Years later, Twitchell's wife was 3 months pregnant. He met up with Lacey and they kissed. Twitchell ended up confessing this to his wife quite immediately and ended his affair with Lacey. Lacey blocked Twitchell and disappeared from his life for a year. After that year, Lacey was engaged to a new man and wanted to rekindle their friendship. The friendship quickly brought them back to old habits, and once more they were romantically entangled. Lacey, however, was not prioritized compared to killing. Twitchell returned to the dating sites, created a new profile, and got back to his search for a victim. He found a man he called Mr. Thursday, who was really named John Brian Altinger. Altinger told Twitchell he wasn't available to meet on a Friday. This caused an issue as Twitchell designated Fridays as his kill days, as he lied to his wife about a fictitious psychiatrist appointment he had every Friday. As Altinger had become a burden with the scheduling issue, Twitchell created another new profile and started fresh. Unfortunately, Altinger had lied to Twitchell as he now contacted the new woman Twitchell had just made a profile for, and now he was suddenly free. They set a time to meet, and again, Twitchell met him in the garage he had set up as a kill room. Once Altinger arrived, Twitchell panicked and lied, saying his name was Harry, and that the woman Altinger was to meet was running late. Then he went as far as to cancel on her behalf because she was supposedly stuck in traffic. That same night, Altinger messaged Twitchell's female account on the dating site asking if he could come over later that night. Twitchell agreed. As Altinger entered the garage, Twitchell swung a pipe to the back of his skull. Altinger, however, put up a fight and remained conscious until Twitchell resorted to his hunting knife. He stabbed him in the stomach and then in his neck. He waited for him to bleed out, covered in blood. Twitchell then began to dismember the body. He wrote, "Dismembering a human body was a relatively unexciting event, but I had my ways of making it more fun. I sang to myself as I worked, talked to myself, reflected on the new tools I would get to make the next one easier." He put all the body parts in bags and cleaned the garage using ammonia to try and remove any evidence. In this moment, his relationship with Lacey caused trouble as his wife no longer trusted him. As he had finished cleaning up, she called to ask where he was. He lied and said he was at the gym. Unfortunately, his wife knew it was closed. Twitchell created an elaborate lie and went so far as to hire an actor to pretend to be gym staff to confirm he actually went. He loaded the bags with Altinger's remains in the car and put it in the garage and left. After his kill, Twitchell went back to his normal life as if nothing had happened. He spent the next day with his daughter and watched episodes of Dexter. Soon after, Twitchell moved on to the next stage of his plan for Altinger. He easily found Altinger's apartment, took the cash lying around inside, and went to his computer. Conveniently, Altinger had left everything logged in, so Twitchell did not even need to work hard. Twitchell created an automated response on Altinger's email saying Altinger had left to go on a 2-month vacation with a woman. He also deleted Altinger's online dating profile. Twitchell also pretended to have a day job, so on Mondays he would leave early to attend a fictitious morning meeting. He went back to the garage with the intent of incinerating Altinger's body. Twitchell had underestimated how difficult successfully incinerating would be. He had dumped the body in a barrel and poured in gasoline. Though he had thrown a match in, the burning wasn't working. He decided he would cut the body into smaller pieces and dump them in a river. However, that was going to have to wait as Twitchell felt the urge to see Lacey again. In the SK confession, Twitchell wrote a very detailed description of their sexual encounter. He slept at Lacey's and the next day he returned to Altinger's disposal. Twitchell cut Altinger in smaller pieces that he described as medallion-sized portions. In his SK confessions, Twitchell spent multiple paragraphs on describing how he cut the body and clearly enjoyed it. He wrote, "This experience changed my sense of place in the world forever. I felt stronger, somehow above other people." He then decided he was done for the day and put Altinger's remains in the trunk of his car and went home. Once more, he was to face relationship upheaval as Lacey messaged him having a depressive episode and said she was going to take pills. Twitchell called 911. Lacey was not pleased about this, but she survived. However, her depressive episode was ironically due to finding out a prior man she'd been in a relationship with fit the signs of a sociopath. In his SK confessions, Twitchell mentions how much this prior relationship had damaged Lacey. For this reason, he asked her for the man's information, his full name and address. At this point in the SK confessions, Twitchell also takes the time to let the reader know that he is not a Dexter Morgan copycat, as he does not have access to high-power tranquilizers and does not have time to stalk his victims. That night, due to the situation with Lacey, he was too tired to go dump the body, so he simply went to sleep. The next day, Twitchell woke up to get rid of the remains, but soon realized the bridge he'd planned to dump them from wasn't suitable and too many people were around. He finally decided to put the remains in the sewer in a suburb that was lightly populated. According to his SK confession, it took him less than 3 minutes to dump the body parts down a manhole. He then returned to the garage to further destroy remaining evidence. This is where the SK confession document ends. Altinger's friends became suspicious at his absence, especially with the sudden emails saying he had left with an unknown woman for 2 months. They ended up breaking into his apartment to find his passport there. Though Twitchell was convinced to have done a clean job, what might have seemed like a small detail to him ended up jailing him. Twitchell had kept Altinger's car, telling the police Altinger said he met a woman and was leaving and therefore didn't need his car. Twitchell alleged he paid 40 Canadian dollars for the car. Understandably, the police found this suspicious and therefore arrested him on October 31st, 2008. The SK confession was used as key evidence and Twitchell ended up admitting to the murder, but claimed it was in self-defense. He also claimed the SK confession was fiction that was only somewhat based in reality. Twitchell was convicted of first-degree murder for the death of Altinger. He also faced an attempted murder for his first victim, Tetro. However, those charges were dropped, even though Twitchell admitted to it. Twitchell ended up with a maximum sentence of life in prison with no parole eligibility for 25 years. As stated prior, the media went wild over this case as the public rarely has the opportunity to read the thoughts and process of a killer. In fact, in 2012, Twitchell tried to use this as a reason for appeal. He claimed the over-sensationalized media made it impossible for a jury not to be influenced. He ended up abandoning the appeal. Also in 2012, Michael C. Hall, the actor who plays Dexter Morgan in the show, said he did not support the actions of Twitchell and called them horrifying. Interestingly, in 2015, Tetro wrote a personal account about his dealings with Twitchell. So, my opinion about this case, having read the 43 pages of his diary or manifesto or whatever you want to call it, is that effectively, I think that this was a man who really overestimated his own intelligence. There are multiple moments where he's talking about how much he's better than the other men that Lacey dated, or how smart he is, or how great he is. And he's always talking down about men, and I think it's rooted in his own insecurity. Like, there were moments when he was talking about the men he was gonna look for on the dating sites. He was always looking for men he could overpower, which is understandable considering his goal, but I also think it has a psychological meaning that he wants to feel powerful compared to other men, like a superiority compared to other men. And in a strange way, I also feel like he doesn't respect women either, though he seems to care about Lacey and his wife. There's also an obvious disrespect in lying to them both, and I mean, that goes without saying. I do think that this man was kind of an edgelord type character that thought that killing made him interesting and different, and you just don't understand, you know? Very much, I'm not like the other girls, but I'm not like the other men kind of thing. Like, that's the vibe I got from all the pages I read. I definitely feel like this was someone who felt like something was missing in their lives, and they chose something entirely destructive because they thought that was the answer. I don't think the show Dexter, in my opinion, I don't think it glamorizes killing. I think it brings into question issues that might be gray, like him being a vigilante and murdering murderers. Is that okay? And I think that's kind of the point of the show. What Twitchell did was to put his own meaning into it, like as if this was a way for the show to say, hey, it's okay to kill people if they deserve it, kind of thing. You know, that can be done with any show or movie. Like, crazies have been infusing their own opinions on even the least problematic things, you know, like Catcher in the Rye. That's the reason that the guy who killed Lennon, because he was a phony, and he was inspired by Catcher in the Rye. So I don't think that it's the show's problem, it's almost always the person's problem. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll catch you guys next time.